By late 1941, the Royal Navy had learned a bitter lesson. On December 10, two of its proud capital ships, HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse, were attacked by Japanese land-based aircraft off the coast of Malaya. In less than 2 hours, both were gone, slipping beneath the waves. The loss stunned Britain and the world alike. Prince of Wales was a modern battleship, bristling with 14-inch guns and modern defenses, while Repulse was a seasoned veteran of the Great War. Yet neither could withstand the fury of aircraft. It marked the end of an era. Battleships, once the supreme symbols of naval might, were now exposed, vulnerable, even obsolete, without the shield of air power. The disaster made one truth painfully clear: control of the air meant control of the sea. Inside the Admiralty, a new urgency took hold. The Royal Navy needed carriers, and it needed them quickly. But traditional fleet carriers were slow and costly to build, while the smaller escort carriers lacked speed and staying power. Britain needed something in between: a light fleet carrier, fast, affordable, and quick to produce. The Colossus-Class would be that answer. In 1942, the Director of Naval Construction faced a new challenge: to design a different kind of aircraft carrier. One that could be built quickly, without straining Britain's overstretched shipyards. It had to be light enough for civilian yards to handle, yet strong and capable enough to operate alongside the fleet. The result was the 1942 design, soon known to the world as the Colossus-Class. Unlike the heavily armored fleet carriers before them, these ships were built to commercial standards, a bold decision that opened construction to a wide range of shipyards across Britain and the Commonwealth. It was a triumph of practicality over perfection. The design struck a careful balance between simplicity and strength. Each carrier displaced around 13,000 tons standard, or about 18,000 tons fully loaded. They measured 695 feet in length, with a beam of 80 feet and a draft of 23 feet at full load. Power came from two Parsons-geared turbines, fed by 4 boilers, generating around 40,000 shaft horsepower, enough to push the ships to 25 knots, fast enough to keep pace with the main fleet. Their armament was primarily defensive: 6 quadruple 2-pounder pom-pom mounts and 16 twin 20mm Ehrlichons, later replaced by 40mm Bofors, as faster and deadlier aircraft appeared on the horizon. Each carrier could carry between 35 and 40 aircraft, typically a mix of torpedo bombers and fighters. They lacked the imposing armor and vast air wings of larger carriers like HMS Ark Royal, but that was never their purpose. Their power lay in numbers, speed, and adaptability. They could be built fast, repaired easily, and sent wherever they were needed, the perfect ships for a world at war. By the time most Colossus-class carriers entered service, the tide of war had already turned. Germany was collapsing, and Japan was retreating across the Pacific. Still, a few of these new carriers reached the front lines in time to serve. HMS Glory joined the British Pacific Fleet in 1945, operating aircraft on patrol and supply duties as Japan's final defenses crumbled. HMS Venerable and HMS Vengeance followed soon after, supporting post-war operations and the repatriation of Allied prisoners of war. Their late arrival meant they saw little direct combat, but their presence signaled something important: a new age of naval warfare, one in which carriers, not battleships, would define naval power. Peace did not end the usefulness of the Colossus-class. On the contrary, they became the backbone of the Royal Navy's post-war air arm. With larger fleet carriers under refit or in reserve, the Colossus ships filled the gaps, training pilots, supporting fleet operations, and showing the flag across the globe. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the class proved its worth once again. HMS Triumph became the first British carrier to see combat in the conflict, launching strikes and reconnaissance missions against North Korean forces. Her aircraft flew thousands of sorties in bitter weather, from bomb runs to ground support missions, a reminder that even small carriers could make a big difference. HMS Theseus and HMS Glory also served off Korea, their Sea Furies and Fireflies providing relentless air support for United Nations troops on the ground. One of the remarkable outcomes of the Colossus program was how widely the ships would spread after the war. Britain no longer needed such a large carrier fleet, and its allies were eager to build their own air arms. As a result, the Colossus-Class found new homes around the world. HMS Colossus was loaned to France, serving until 1974. HMS Venerable went to the Netherlands and later to Argentina. HMS Vengeance was sold to Brazil, serving until 2001, more than half a century after her launch. HMS Warrior with Argentina, while HMS Vengeance even served briefly with the Royal Australian Navy before heading to South America. From the North Atlantic to the South Pacific, these ships became the training grounds and front lines of dozens of new navies. They gave smaller nations the ability to project air power, something only the world's greatest fleets had once enjoyed. The Colossus-Class were never meant to rival the great carriers of the United States Navy. Instead, their genius lay in balance: fast enough to serve, cheap enough to build, and capable enough to fight. Their light construction meant they could not take as much punishment as armored fleet carriers, and their smaller air groups limited their striking power. But they made up for it with speed of production, ease of repair, and adaptability. They were also extremely versatile. Over their long service lives, they were converted into helicopter carriers, training ships, and maintenance vessels. Some were even modified with angled flight decks, mirror landing sites, and new radar systems to operate early jet aircraft. Few wartime designs proved as flexible. It is no exaggeration to say that the Colossus-Class brought the jet age to navies that might never otherwise have known it. The Colossus-Class began as wartime expediency, a quick fix for a desperate need. But they became much more. In them, Britain found a template for post-war carrier design, one refined in later classes like the Majestic, Centaur, and Hermes. Most importantly, they represented a shift in naval thinking, that air power, not armor, was now the heart of sea power. The last Colossus-Class carrier in active service, Brazil's Minas Gerais, was finally decommissioned in 2001, nearly 60 years after the first ship was launched. From the icy waters of Korea to the steaming jungles of Indochina, from the North Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, these ships had served under many flags and many names, but their origins were the same: a desperate need in wartime Britain. Built in haste, they endured in peace. Born from the loss of battleships, they became symbols of survival and adaptation. And though they lacked the glamour of great fleet carriers, the Colossus-Class light fleet carriers quietly carried naval aviation into the modern world. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.